Downhill, a car doesn't roll unless it's pushed, and you're giving me a great push. The deal of it is, we try to give each other hope, and not hope that I'll live, hope that she'll do well after I pass, hope that people will support her, hope that if she meets somebody and likes him, she marries him.
You know, he has everything planned, you know.
I'm working on it. She said it was her call. She wants to walk out behind the casket alone. I guess that's the way to do it, because when we were married, you know how your brother takes you down, your father takes you down? She said, well, I don't know which of my brothers to walk in with. I don't want to offend anybody. I said, I got a solution. I said, you walk in with me, you walk out with me. And the other day, I said, who's going to walk down the aisle with you behind the casket? You know, to support her. And she said, nobody. I walked in with you alone. I'm walking out with you alone. Mm-hmm. There's a thing in life where you have to come to terms with dying. Well, I haven't come to terms with dying yet. I want to come to terms with being sure that you understand that my love for you up to this point was as much as it could be, and it'll be as much as it could be for eternity. I always said the only thing I have to give you is a poor gift, and it's myself. And I always gave it. And if there's a way to come back and give it, I'll do that too. Do you have the Valentine's Day letter there?
Yeah. My dearest wife, this is a very special day. It is a day on which we share our love, which still grows after all these years. Now that love is being used by us to sustain us through these hard times. All my love, all my days, and more. Happy Valentine's Day.
I could write on and on about her. She lights up the room in the morning when she tells me to put both hands on her shoulders so she can support me. She lights up my life when she says to me at night, wouldn't you like a little ice cream? Or would you please drink more water? I mean, those aren't very romantic things to say, but they stir my heart. In my mind, in my heart, there has never been, there is not now, and never will be another Annie.
Okay, I'll just stop it too abruptly right there. And then a few weeks later, Danny passed away. On the same day, actually, that this particular clip was aired on NPR for the first time. So these are the kind of conversations that StoryCorps aims to record. And really briefly, for those who may not be familiar with it, StoryCorps is a non-traditional oral history project. And what they do is they travel all over the country recording conversations of people about their lives. And the idea, they're a non-traditional project because when people participate in the project, instead of a staff member interviewing them, StoryCorps asks them to bring someone that they know, usually a relative, friend, spouse, coworker, anyone, to be the interviewer or to tell that person their story, to be a sounding board, or simply to record a conversation. And then people come into a recording booth, record for about 40 minutes, and StoryCorps will archive that conversation at the Library of Congress, and will air occasionally a little excerpt on the radio to sort of put compelling content out there. And the idea is that these moments, these conversations, are not captured in everyday life in many other mediums. And when I was at StoryCorps, I worked as a facilitator for their traveling mobile department. And so I lived for about a month at a time in a different city, recording conversations like these. And Danny and Annie are truly a special couple of participants, but many of the conversations we heard were about love and heartbreak, or just important moments. And that's why I wanted to talk about StoryCorps specifically, to start off, because they talk about how they're recording stories and our experiences, but what they're really good at is sort of capturing these particular moments. And one of the things that this particular clip does well or illustrates is that the moment can be a specific event or experience that people sit together to reflect on, an event that has happened, but it can also be the conversation itself that's happening in the recording booth. Especially towards the second part of the clip, you hear Danny and Annie talking to each other. Nothing is really happening. They're not talking about a specific event, but it's the interaction between them. So, and almost as much as what they say to each other as the silence that passes in between them, those are the telling moments. And all of that, the wonderful thing about radio is that all of that is captured and recorded. And now it can be shared in many ways. Another really great example that I love telling is when I started at StoryCorps, they sort of train you and they throw you out into the water. They're like, you are a facilitator now, go facilitate. And as a facilitator, our role is to act as sound engineers, making sure the microphones and the levels are okay, but also you act as a kind of a third ear into the future who may one day listen to this recording and needs to kind of help fill in the holes. So it's like this balancing act because you're in that space with them, but you're not a part of the interaction necessarily. So when I started at StoryCorps, my first assignment was actually here in Miami, Florida. The StoryCorps operates out of an Airstream trailer outfitted as a recording booth, and they were here in Miami in 2010. They were parked right outside a Miami-Dade Wolfson campus. And one of the first interviews I ever recorded was this woman. She had called ahead to make an appointment. It's free to participate at StoryCorps, but she wanted to come in and with her two adult best friends, and talk to them about the story of how she came to the United States, which her friends had never heard of before. And so the three women come up, and they must have been sometime after their job because they were all very dressed up in very sort of business formal almost, I would say. And they come in, sit down, and then the story this woman tells is when she was a really young girl, not quite a teenager, she and her mom crossed into the U.S. from Mexico, right along the border. But the way she tells that story, there's two specific moments that have stuck in my mind and that clearly were important to her because that's where she spent a lot of time kind of describing, right? So she talks about the time when she and her mom were in Tijuana, waiting in a hotel, waiting for the coyotes to signal to them when they would be crossing onto the U.S. And she talks about being in the hotel room and looking out the window and seeing over a hill at night, people walking up and disappearing into the horizon. And then I didn't know what else would become of their life. Like I left that job, and in my mind I thought, okay, those kids, best of luck to them, who knows what happens. And then here was this example of this woman. She crossed under different circumstances. She did cross with her mom, but it was just such an incredible moment to see her standing there. So I had this particular moment, and at the end of the recording, their conversation's over. They're about to leave. They're all sort of in tears and so emotional with each other, hugging each other, and world and help us create meaning of our lives. Now I work. One of the things I do outside of my, after StoryCorps, I am one of the producers for a podcast based in Miami called Writing Class Radio. And the premise of the show is that it's a writing class, and it's a podcast for people who are interested in hearing true personal stories and also who want to learn a little bit about how to write their own. And one of the hosts of the podcast is the teacher of the class. And she has this thing where she likes to emphasize the difference between the situation and the story, right? The situation being the physical things that happened, what happens in a story. But the story itself is what the narrator has come to say about what has happened. And it's often one of the most difficult things for many of the students to come up with. The story is what makes the story matter, what adds meaning to a bunch of facts. And moments are those things. I think if we focus on the moments, you can sort of think about what the meaning of us. If you follow moments as sort of signposts, you can eventually come back with the meaning of the stories. Why are these set of facts important? Why are these events important? I think it's important to think about the moment. If you had a moment of reflection, a moment of surprise, a moment of recognition, fear, love, those will guide you to making meaning of the stories that happen. Which is also, going back to StoryCorps, one of the fun, and maybe this happens to everyone here, what we would hear about in StoryCorps all the time as facilitators. So the booth is in a public place. A lot of people will, like at Wolfson, Miami-Dade, Wolfson campus, people walk around that area and will be like, come in and say like, what are you doing here? Would explain what the project is. We'll invite people to come in. Oh, come in, do a recording right now. They love it. Everyone loves the idea. It's like, what a great idea, what a great mission. There should be more of this. Yeah, let's start. Oh no, I don't have a story. There's like nothing I can say. There's always this thing also like, oh, my brother-in-law has a story, my best friend has a story, my teacher, they have great stories, but I really have nothing to say here. And which blows my mind, right? Because if you actually get people to sit down and generously share, they have all these things they can say, and you're wondering, like, how did you ever think you had nothing to share? And I hear it at the Moth all the time. So another thing I do is I produce the story slam for the Moth here in Miami. I don't know if folks have heard about, has anyone ever been to the Moth at the Olympia Theater? Some people, okay, awesome. Second Tuesdays of every month. It's a live storytelling show. Everyone can participate. You kind of throw your name in the hat, and if it's pulled, you get to tell a story, a personal story on stage. So many people will say, I love this, but I just come here to listen because I have no story. So I think thinking about moments, I'm at a point in my life where I just will never believe that. I might smile and nod, but I know you're lying through your teeth. Because, again, we come back to moments. And I think the reason we think we don't have stories, and it happens to me also all the time, is because we focus too much on the facts. We focus too much on the situation that happens or an event. And if you sit there and you're like, well, my life is, this past year it has been blah, or, routine. And because it's our lives, we tend to sort of normalize and become used to them. So even if your normal might be really exciting to someone else who does something completely different. I think we would be better off focusing on those moments and sort of, again, following the moments instead of the facts when we're trying to think about stories. I like to think of moments as sort of a building block of the stories. They're what makes them memorable, what makes them important, what makes people remember them. Like, how did something make you feel? Where did that come from? So yeah, if there's like one takeaway, it's like everyone has stories because everyone has feelings. You may think you don't have an exciting life, but you have feelings. So follow that. Follow the moment that you had with somebody else or the moment that you had on your own, and you will find the many stories you can share or choose not to, right? But you have them. And so with that idea, that I don't believe that when people say, like, I don't have a story, I thought we might do a little exercise to prove everyone wrong. And how should we do this? Maybe we'll ask everybody to get up from their seats and stand up for a second. You can put anything you're holding down in your chair. No one will take it. And if people can start walking around, and we're going to pass around a little hand card. So we're going to, yes. So if you can randomly assemble yourself into a group of 4, like walk around right now, make eye contact with someone, friendly, maybe somebody that you didn't come with. Okay, so how was that? Awful. No stories. No one had anything to share. We had to like pull everyone apart. So that's it. The word, like what I would just say is just remember that feeling and remember that we do have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to share. And it seems like this is one of the most important times to do that right now. So if you ever hear anyone say that too, like, oh, I don't have anything to share, like I don't have a story, it's probably like a really important story that needs to come out at some point. And for all of you too. I want to see everyone at the Moth next time. When everybody's signing up and everyone just like participating, sharing more with one another. That's it. Enjoy your moments, guys. And unless, no, here we go.
Q&A?
Also, we can do a quick Q&A if somebody has any questions. Yes.
So I was looking at the question sheets, and the first question was, what's an object that you have that you never throw away? And I was curious, what's an object that you have that you never throw away? The question was, what's an object that you never throw away? We shared with each other.
Yeah, so my turn. I have a ring. My mom gave me a ring. I can never wear it. It's a little too big for me. My mom passed away when I was 9, but I remember her wearing it, how it fit in her hand, so I have it. But I never throw it away. So that's one of those. Thank you for asking. Other questions?
You ended your talk by saying that it seems like this is one of the most important times now that we should be sharing, without being too partisan. In case this is a somewhat polarized audience, as is America. Can you talk about what you meant more about that in terms of an existential or moral dimension?
I mean, it's just in general, right? I mean, you can get political or not, but last elections was a huge surprise for people on both sides of the aisle, and I think that's important because I didn't know how many people I knew who felt in many different ways all across the political spectrum. And I wonder, like, I was really surprised about how I didn't know that, because there's certain things we just don't talk about, and some conversations that we have, and some moments that we shared. So I think in general, and that can apply to politics, elections, or like experiences with coworkers or friends. It's just we don't give I don't know why. Sometimes we don't share moments. You kind of have to earn intimacy also in a way. You can't just reveal these things to other people. It makes sense that we don't, and we probably shouldn't. But there are things we can do to consciously create spaces and intimacy and moments. So not moments, but spaces so that these moments can be shared. So just in general, if we're living in community, whoever we're living with, however you define your community, I think it's important to engage one another. So, I mean, political or not, that's how I feel.
Yeah, in many ways, you've been a professional listener. I mean, for people who tell their stories, you need the other side of it, of people listening. And listening is not something that people necessarily do well because they're thinking about what they're going to say rather than listening. So what would you say about being a professional listener and learning how to listen so well?
I love that question in a very selfish way because I never get to talk about it. I think, I mean, it's just shut up, right? It's just really listen to what people are actually saying. And for a little, I think it's also the kind of thing that you get better as you do it. And the more you do it, there's a way, I think I just became better because I had to do it. And then I just couldn't help myself. I think just really listening when the classic thing that people say is like somebody needs to talk, they don't often want your advice or your opinion. They just want to say something to someone that's there to receive everything that they have to say. And kind of be conscious of just be very self-aware and conscious of what you're doing when somebody is talking to you. Like, are you listening to are you trying to connect? And so you're trying to come up with examples of what it is that you can say that connects with their experience. I mean, that's not a bad thing, but it sometimes gets in the way of actually listening to someone is saying, especially because we're not really good talkers. One of the things that I learned really quickly is that often we don't finish our sentences when we talk in normal conversations, right? So now, and it's very obvious when you have to go back through tape and edit audio. It's like, wow, that thought was great, but it's not there. Like, I know because I was in the room, so I know what they meant, but it's not on tape. This is not usable. We just don't finish each other's sentences. So I would say a follow-up question is like one of my favorite things in the world. Hello, okay. You know, when you're in conversation with somebody else and then something else comes up and they move on to the conversation again, to something else, I'm the kind of person who's like, but you didn't finish what you were saying. And nobody really cares. Like, in social situations, people are... Hello, okay. So maybe that too, it's kind of like be conscious of the conversations that never finish or the thoughts that trail away because everyone understood it, but sometimes we don't understand it, right? Sometimes if you go back and you ask that person, it's like, what did you mean when you said that? Like, explain it to me like I'm a little kid, like finish your sentence because I don't want to make assumptions about what you're saying. So pay attention, I think would be the good advice if I'm anyone to say that.
Submit stories to StoryCorps outside of the traveling van? Is there a submission pipeline that we can take part in?
Yes, so there actually is now. Very recently, it used to be that you had to physically get yourself to a recording booth, but now you can do that through the StoryCorps app. And you can learn more about that on their website. I no longer work for them, so I'm not up to date with all of the details, but you can download an app on your phone and basically act as a facilitator and interview someone in your life that you care about or have people interview one another. And there's also all these tips and tricks about what makes a good interview, how to be a good interviewer, how to listen well, and how to do that with people of different backgrounds, ages, and experiences with technology. So there's a way to do that on the app, and the beautiful thing about it is that now whatever you record in the app it also gets archived at the Folk Life Center at the Library of Congress and sort of joins this collective tapestry of stories for posterity. So yeah, so more on storycorps.org.
I think all of us could notice how emotional and how much empathy you have with the person or people you're working with, even with us just now.